Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us. It's been amazing to follow you, to just make it be known. I really am at the beginning of my kind of sober journey, along with COVID and everything else. I found myself really going to the social channels like TikTok and Instagram. Of course, you start looking up those buzzwords of non-alcoholic and sobriety and things of that nature. And funny enough, I found you. It was just so great to see your journey, to follow along on everything that was happening. Specifically for me, I've been a bartender for 20 years and have been sober for almost 2 years now. It was just so incredible to see your journey. I just, for 1 second, I think it would be really great. Thank you so much for coming on the show. But I really wanted to start off with, how was your journey? It seemed like you were just putting so much into just letting it all be transparent and be known on social channels like TikTok. I'd love just to talk about your sober journey and how TikTok might have helped along with that and just that journey as itself.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for having me and congrats on 2 years. That's awesome. I'm sure even more challenging coming from a bar background. So kudos to you. Yeah. So I think my journey with sobriety started a lot earlier than I present on TikTok or social media. So I drank a lot in my early to mid teens. It was a very party, rebellious teen, snuck out a lot, went to a lot of raves. Lots of things involved besides alcohol as well, and just overall with not making decisions that were gonna serve my long-term potential or being my best self. And so I continued that lifestyle until I was about 18 or 19, actually. I feel like I change 18 or 19 every day because 'cause I'm like, I don't remember exactly what day it was, but I hit a point where I was watching all of my friends take these really exciting next steps in their lives, whether it was college, whether it was career, everyone seemed like they had a direction. And my direction was like, oh, I'm still going to go party. I'm still going to take my fake ID and go party. That was what I was doing. And I just knew in my core that was not all that I was put on this earth to do. And I was like, I don't know what got me here, but I know that drugs and alcohol cannot be helpful. That's definitely not helping me become who I want to be. So let's just see what happens if I remove it for a year. And I just set this challenge for myself. And that was how I could look at being this black and white. I can do anything for a year. If it doesn't work, I'll go back to the drinking days afterwards. But unsurprisingly, in that year, my entire life transformed. It's like, surprise, when you remove toxic things, your life gets better. And so, yeah, I got into the college I wanted to. I got my yoga teacher certification. I had healthier relationships, healthier friendships. Like everything was just net better. And I was like, why would I reincorporate something that was so clearly toxic? And so I was completely sober from alcohol for 3 years. And by the end of the 3 years, I had my dream job at the time, great relationships, first healthy romantic relationship I'd ever had, like so many good things. And that's when I was, I think, 21 or 22, and I was like, "Okay, I don't wanna miss out on this, what feels like very important aspect of your early 20s." And maybe my relationship with alcohol can be different in my early 20s than it was in my late teens. And so I reintroduced alcohol in moderation, what I felt like was moderation, for a couple of years. And while it wasn't destructive in the way that it was in my teenage years, and I was still able to, like, hold a steady job and hold relationships, again, it was not adding. And I hit a point early 2022, really in dry January of 2022, where I was like, okay, not super happy in my current job, really want to start a company, have no idea what that company is going to look like. But I'm almost 25, and while that is extremely young, I'm probably like a quarter way through this life thing. So if I want to do something, I better start doing it. And so I was like, I'm just going to remove anything from my life, whether that be relationships, substances, anything that is not actively helping me. And alcohol was the first thing to go. So I'll pause there.
Wow.
I'm free since then.
I love that journey. And it's so interesting you bring up your teenage years. But so many times I think there's so much that can be done during those years that everyone's, you don't start drinking until you're 21. It's, yeah, I've been doing this forever. And yeah. And uh,
I know, right?
gosh, and it's also this interesting thing for me with sobriety that you're not challenged with, but it is something I grapple with. Is now I'm now 40 years old. I've been a bartender for 20 years. It's one of those things you look back and you're like, oh my God, that was just so detrimental. And I just love that you yourself know yourself well enough to say, I'm not adding by drinking. I'm not adding to the scenario. I'm not adding to my career and my development by doing that again. So kudos to you to have just the wherewithal and the own mindset to be like, this is not working for me. This is not serving me, and really taking those next steps. I'm so interested in the journey of absence of proof and that experience. I want to tie one aspect to this, and I think it's really important for me and for anyone who's starting their own business, especially in this non-alc world that we're seeing more and more people getting involved, which is super exciting. But I really was interested in what about your past roles gave you the confidence or kind of the skill sets that you needed to create the business?
Yeah. It's interesting because I don't have an event background. So in terms of my career, I graduated and I started selling
Okay.
TV ads was my first job. I was an assistant in television in LA and didn't love that. And so I moved back home to Seattle. And in Seattle, the biggest companies are like Microsoft and Amazon. That's where people work. And I was lucky enough to get a job at Amazon in advertising sales. And I was there for 4.5 years until I quit to do absence approved full time. And what I'm so grateful for at Amazon is they put you through a very rigorous 6 to 8 month training program of how to send an email, how to maintain professionalism, how to sell, like everything from assuming zero. And that foundation is really what set me up to one, believe that I could truly do anything. Like Amazon is, if you have an idea, go build it. Like I cannot speak highly enough of the culture that they cultivate there. But I just remember being like, I have the knowledge and skill set. I also, absence of proof, one of our main revenue streams is branded partnerships. And that's when I was selling at Amazon. So it was instead of selling Amazon, I'm now selling myself. And so I'm going to care a lot more about selling myself too. So those skill sets really transfer. And then the rest of it, I just think I do a lot of research on growth mindset. I'm not sure if you're familiar with like that. It's like a catchphrase, but growth mindset is essentially the belief that you can learn something even if you don't know it. It's like it seems simple, but it's surprising how many things I've started throughout my life and I'm not good at it immediately. So I'm like, oh, I'm just not good at this. Not going to put effort into trying. But changing that mindset to I don't know it yet. I'm not good at this yet. And knowing that I can actually learn it. That's how I felt about events. No idea. My first event was an absolute disaster. And shout out to anyone who came because it was not a great customer experience. Like it was not good. But I could have said, "Okay, it was not good, I'm not good at events," or I could do what I did, which is like hours and hours of studying, reading, Googling, studying events. How do you get branded partnerships for events? How do you throw an event that people want to come to? How do you make people feel comfortable at the event? Like everything. And there's so much knowledge. We're so lucky to live in a world where we have access to literally all the information that's ever existed. If someone has done it before you, you can also learn it. So that's how I felt about the events.
Nice. And so I love that you mentioned that and just I love how you're an open book and you really share these trials and tribulations you've had with your business. And I feel I've learned so much from just watching you over this from the beginning of Absence of Proof. And I couldn't agree with you more. For me, as you can imagine, I've been doing these non-alcoholic pop-up events and with 20 years of bartending experience, the bartending aspect of it is super simple for me. The aspect of throwing an event and marketing an event, that's where my
Right.
growth mindset is really learning that side of it right now. And so I actually, with that background and by
Sure.
being able to implement those things into and that branded partnership, I find it's a really cool thing to learn, and that's where I am on my journey. I feel like we've actually, of course, this is not so many brands are in this space, but you and I have both used Ritual Zero Proof and have had amazing. For me, it's been an amazing experience
Love
to
them.
work with a brand like that and to show how we can incorporate that into a world of non-alc when you're surrounded by alcohol. For me here in Napa Valley, I am literally the biggest black sheep you could possibly get. I'm literally, this whole industry is made on alcohol and wine sales. So it's been a really fun journey with that. I guess my question along with that is just how have you been applying your elements to getting it to be known, to getting that kind of marketing angle? Because you have done such a wonderful job of making sure people know about these events and getting it out there. So if you wouldn't mind speaking about that a little bit.
Yeah, of course. I think definitely ties into the career history that I've had of advertising. I think we always talked about this at Amazon, but to increase sales, you either need to increase traffic or conversion, meaning you need to either increase the amount of tickets sold or the amount of people that are finding your event and then keeping the number or the percentage of tickets sold constant because that will then increase the number of tickets you sell. And so I really took that approach where I was like, okay, I can't control whether or not someone presses buy. That's out of my control. But what I can do is make sure that literally everyone and their mother knows about this event and knows that this is happening. And so I'm really lucky to say that we haven't done a lot of paid advertising. We did it for one event and it honestly didn't work out very well. And so what we found is that word of mouth and community is really what is going to actually get people to show up. And so at the beginning, when we didn't have that community, I really leaned on social media, which can feel cringy or awkward at first. I look back at some of my TikToks and I'm like, oh girl, like, you do not know what you're talking about at all. And I have to stop myself from deleting them because I'm like, it's part of the journey. And then if someone else wants to do a business, I want them to see that like everyone starts somewhere. But yeah, I just started screaming it from the rooftops. This is what I'm doing. If you're interested, come. If you're not, okay, maybe keep scrolling. Maybe don't leave me a hate comment, but it's all good. So yeah, so I would say like advice to anyone starting anything is like the biggest hurdle is going to
Word.
be getting past your own fear of being seen and telling people what you're doing. But once you're past that fear and you can just be like, look, this is what I'm doing, I think you'll be surprised at how many people actually want to come as well. And how many people might also be interested in non alcoholic options, but they're too afraid of the social stigma to actually talk about it.
Yeah, that's so true. And I love that aspect of it. And I that's so true. And I guess my next question to you is it's been amazing to see your growth from starting in New York to now in 7 different places and doing these things. How have you leaned on your community, or what aspects are you doing to have that happen? How are you having all these satellites? And just run me through that a little bit because I find it really interesting.
Yeah. So my biggest thing was in terms of the financial aspect of a business, you're always thinking about like how you can scale. And for us, I think the easiest way to scale was like, let's reach more people in different cities. So that was like the business thought behind it. And then the community part of it was like, if there are this many people in New York that want non-alcoholic options, think about how many people there are around the country that want non-alcoholic options. Let's rinse and repeat what we've built in New York and extend those communities other places. And so that's what we've been doing. And with the same marketing model in New York, word of mouth, leaning on communities in those cities that we've built, that's how we've been effective at that. And it's still learnings because every city is very culturally different. People care about different things. People show up to different things. People have different budgets. So those are all like the nitty gritty of what we work through on a day to day basis. But at the end of the day, it's like we just want to throw as many non alcoholic social options as possible.
That's amazing.
And we do that by expanding cities.
I love that. And so then I guess the next thing I just have to hear more about, because I have just been so like just unbelievably surprised and so excited for you with the whole New York Mets thing. I just have to just first say kudos to you for getting that done. But you have to walk me through how that happened, because it's just for me, I was just like, this is incredible. So I want to hear more.
Thank you. Yeah, it was definitely probably the biggest punch me moment of the whole thing so far. Is I was like, we were in coffee shops 6 months ago, and like, how does a stadium care about what we're doing? And I think that it's just a testament to all of the other like amazing people, brands in our industry that have really made noise over the past couple of years and said, hey, we're here and we're not going anywhere, and people need these options. And City Field was so incredible to work with. The Mets owners, the Mets team, everyone could not have been more lovely and really just listen to like, how have you been successful? How do we bring more inclusive options here? They had already wanted to do this, and having a partner in New York, I think made sense for them because we've been doing it as well. So it's like, how do we join forces and really make a splash with this? And yeah, so then we just started talking about like, what could this look like at the stadium? And we ended up doing a 4-day non-alcoholic lounge within the stadium where people could go to the game, come get drinks, get food, and it was really an incredible experience.
Wow. And so then, if I'm correct, that's going to be continuing on. Am I right?
So they have last week actually announced that they'll be expanding the mocktail menus throughout the stadium, which is so special because that's the end goal, right? It's like pop-ups are awesome, love doing them. But really the goal is let's change society in terms of everywhere should have these inclusive options. And so seeing them really take the feedback from the event and expand it throughout the stadium is like mission accomplished, basically. That's how I feel. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. And it sounded as if I'm correct, like they're going to be doing the non-alcoholic offerings. Are they just mixing it in or folding it into their bars that they already run and operate, and just bring those non-alcoholic products to those places? Very cool. Very cool. That is just amazing. And to see the inclusion of them doing that, for me, it's such a win in so many different ways of seeing someone like the Mets and City Fields getting behind it, looking out into their network and seeing Absence of Proof doing it and saying, let's combine forces here. Um, the next thing I'm just like so curious about is that's just so huge, right? Like just everyone feels included, but at the same time, not just on a business sense, you're also making it that you're bringing in more revenue because these people want something and they normally could just have a water or a soda. And that's, first of all, the price is not there. Second of all, the experience and the taste is not there. And so for me to even think about That would just be so huge for me to go into a stadium and to know that I could have anything from non-alcoholic wine, beer, and cocktails. For me, it's just a revenue generator too. Like at the end of the day, that's just another amazing revenue stream for them. But so I love that you're doing that. And then I've also seen that you're doing some restaurants and helping them with their program. And that's also something that I'm doing here in Napa, which has just been an amazing experience. I just wanted to hear what that was like from the restaurant's point of view, too, because I always just find that so interesting to see where their level of interest is, how you're working with them, and how that's all going.
Yeah, I think when I first started Absence of Proof, I was very much, we need to be alcohol free spaces. Anything that Absence of Proof touches, it needs to be completely alcohol free. And I was very strict on that. And now that I've been doing this for a while, I realize that so many people can benefit from just having options. And you don't need to be completely alcohol free. You can be at a restaurant and having a non alcoholic option is awesome. And you don't have to go to a completely alcohol free event. And a lot of people are not interested in a completely alcohol free event. And so plugging into restaurants, stadiums, et cetera, is really our way of contributing to those folks who might want that option without excluding anyone, including people that drink. And yeah, we've really been working with restaurants on how do you create complex non-alcoholic cocktails. I don't have to tell you, but so many restaurants are like, they can have a soda. And you're missing the point. You're also missing a lot of revenue, like you said. And so that's been my like side hustle within the business is like convincing people. Sorry, someone's coming calling me. Is convincing people that the option and that you should absolutely be doing this.
Yeah, and you're so right. And I guess my next question is when you're working with them, how has the response been from them? Are they seeing it once they try those more complex cocktails? Is that something that's resonating with them? And they're finally the light bulb goes off and they're like, oh, wait, we can just do non alcoholic cocktails, just remove the alcohol and use these different brands.
Absolutely. So Gotham is a New York institution. I'm not sure if you're familiar with New York restaurants or anything, but they're incredible and amazing people. And it was such a cool collaboration because it was for Restaurant Week, which is a big deal in New York, where restaurants offer discount menus and have more accessible pricing options for everyone. And so we thought it would be a perfect opportunity with Dry July and then also to introduce the non-alcoholic cocktails. And we had no idea how it would perform. To be completely candid, I was very nervous on how it would sell because this is a higher price point than our community typically goes for. And I didn't want anyone to feel excluded or like it wasn't accessible. But we ended up selling out the entire restaurant for the whole night, which was really special.
Cool.
Yeah, it was really amazing to see how many people were this excited about a mocktail menu. And so it was great for me because I had put a lot of work into this and I was like, if this doesn't go well, this is going to be really embarrassing. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so now we're in conversations about how do we do this seasonally? How do we bring more folks in throughout the year and more brands and all of these things? It went great. And I think it's just a great case study for anyone else doing similar things.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I really enjoy that you said at the beginning, and I also have been experiencing this the more events that I put on. Recently, I just did a event called Porch Fest, which is where in downtown Napa we close off a couple of blocks, and it's basically there's bands playing on people's front porches, and then we had a whole area where there were food vendors, and then I had Good Times Alc-Free and did a pop up. And it was a great experience, and it was one of those things that at the same time, what I'm starting to realize too, like you mentioned, it's if you throw just a non-alc event, the issue seems to be, and this is something that I'd love to talk about for a moment too, of just sobriety and that conversation with people. I forget who said it. It was like this a perfect meme of there's really three different reactions that people have when you tell them that you are sober or not drinking. It's either they're really interested and want to hear more, they're super supportive and want to try it themselves, or they're looking in a mirror and they're looking at their own drinking and they get really confrontational and agitated by you saying that you don't drink. And for me, that has been such an interesting way just to form it to other types of people and the reactions that they'll have. But at the same time, it's the thing that I'm bringing up is you have to have a thick skin sometimes when you're just doing these non-alc events because there are a lot of haters and there are a lot of people who will look at this and say, I'm looking at myself and saying, why the hell would you even do this? Why are people paying for this? I don't know why I wanted to bring that up and just talking about it seems as if there is almost this more conducive atmosphere when you are including it in a place that offers all the other things as well. So I just wanted to throw that at you and hear your response to that.
Yeah, I think when I first started and didn't have the community that we have now and didn't really have any success under my belt or anything, I would get a lot of negativity and that would really affect me to like mental breakdown level affect me, almost quitting absence of proof level affect me like really bad. And you start to believe the negativity. You're like, why am I doing something like that's not actually helping the world? Is this an important thing? And you really have to revisit your why because if everyone else is telling you it's stupid, the only way you're going to keep going is if you truly believe that it's going to make an impact or it's a good idea or whatever. But those haters, they definitely do get to you. And yeah, I don't really know where I'm going with this, but moral of the story is that people are always going to have opinions, particularly when they feel like it is attacking something that they hold very dear to themselves. And alcohol, for better or worse, is incredibly sentimental to a lot of people. And it's how they grew up and it's a part of their lifestyle. And I have a lot of bartender friends, and they're like, this is what I do. This is how I make friends. This is part of our community. And I get it. I've had alcohol nights where I'm drinking to get drunk, but I've also had alcohol nights where I love a good glass of wine or a nice whiskey and I can enjoy the art of that. And so I totally understand. And I think that's why people get so triggered is one, what is my relationship with alcohol? And then two, they're coming for something that means something to me. And we're all protective over things that mean something to us. So I think that's been my way of extending empathy to some of these folks. But for the most part, I just block them. I think it's just the only thing you can control is, like, the energy that the only thing you can really control is where you put your energy, and, like, when I log into Instagram and I see hundreds of hate comments, the only thing you can do is delete them and move on, or it'll paralyze you, really.
Yeah, I really appreciate that response. And the first thing that brings up to me, and just like you were saying, it was something I grapple with coming to sobriety and being a sober bartender. Like those titles are really hard for people to understand. And especially, I just had a sales rep come into a bar where I was working, and she offered me a glass of whatever they were tasting, the wine buyer on. And I'll taste and spit and I'll do all of that. But she was like, you should come by the winery. And I was like, yeah, thank you, but no, thank you. She just couldn't understand and process what I was doing and how I did it. And I think it's just one of those things that it's going to come with time. I think the more that for me, the first thing I'm going to say is I'm so glad you didn't quit doing absence of proof because, and I really do appreciate that you do keep those harder, more just vulnerable moments that you've made videos about in the early stages. And I know for myself, like when I saw you in those moments, the first thing I want to say is, I'm here for you. I'm here to support you. If you need recipes or whatever, let's help each other out. But I think it's really cool to see when people, I almost want to say people's true colors show up when you tell them that you're sober. And I just love that we're all working through this together. We're all finding challenges along the way, but we're all finding ways to do it together. And I think one thing that has helped me, and when I talk about being a sober bartender, is two things. First is this is my career. This is what I've done forever. I have 20 years of experience doing this. And for me to go and get an insurance job at an office desk is not in the cards for me. It's not where I've put my time and effort. And I have a lot of skills around this. And for many years, even 5 years ago, it was impossible to be a sober bartender because there was not the options and all the different things that can replace alcoholic offerings. So that's been the coolest thing for me now is to see this moment in time where I can get a like for like substitute in a non-alcoholic space. And I can offer that in the normal environment where people know me. And I can just offer them a non-alcoholic offering, or I can have it and they can have their alcohol. And that's been the biggest one for me of being able to say, I don't have to miss out on going out to a nice meal like at Gotham or at these bars and restaurants. I can go in and have the same experience and really enjoy it with people. And that was actually something that happened. There was a new bar that opened up and it was just flooded with people. And I just gotten off of work and I was just like, I want to stop by and show my support. And I showed up, and the guy at the door was someone I knew in the industry. And he's, what are you doing here? You don't drink. Why are you trying to get in the door? And I'm like, dude, I am still me. I have still been this with you. I've seen your journey. There's no way I'm not going to be here. I don't care if you don't have non-alcoholic products. I'm still going to throw a $20 on the bar just to say good luck. And I'm excited for you and congratulations. I just think that part is really right now is if you offer something non-alcoholic, you have made someone like me feel so included in this situation. And if you don't, it's almost like shame on you. It's so easy to do to put something on the menu, even if it's just one thing to feel included. I think that's such a big thing for me. Along with that, I'm really interested to hear, to move the conversation forward, but also with that, I love that we're all seeing these kind of similar trends happening and things happening on your end, on the East Coast and on the West Coast. I'm really interested to see after the success of the Mets, after doing Gotham, what's Absence of Proof really looking for doing over these next 6 months? You could just set on, you could go and just do what you're doing right now, and it would be incredible to see. But I know you've got more planned out. So I'm just interested. What's in the plans? What's in the cards?
Yeah. Yeah. Without sharing too much, we got to get people on their toes. I think it will be unsurprising that I'd like to expand what we've done with the Mets with other folks. I think that expanding our restaurant offerings are going to be really important for us. Expanding the states in which we're active is always the goal. Building the community, building more B2B services. We have such amazing partners in the brands, and I'm sure a lot of the same folks that I do. How do we service them more? How do we get their product in front of more people? And so, yeah, without sounding too boring, it's going to be more of the same, but hopefully on bigger scale.
I love that. And so I want to go to the brand partnerships a little bit because of course that's where I am too. I'd love just to hear what your experience been with them. What do you feel is the things that you are really making sure that are the outcomes or the KPIs that you really want to make sure happen when you work with these brands? I'd just love to hear a little bit more about your relationship and how you work those brand partnerships, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think it's very specific to each brand. And one thing that is such a beauty about being a one or now two-person company. We just hired our first employee, which is very exciting. So yeah, so I think what's great about that is that I can basically do anything a brand wants. And I think that going back to my days at Amazon is my job is to serve the brand. The brand's job is not to serve me. And so anything that I can do, and this really comes from conversations and relationships that I have with brands of saying, what are you challenged with right now? And how can we leverage the community that we've built to help you with those challenges? And so it really varies per brand, whether it's we need liquid to lips, we need people to know that we're this type of product, we need to be in this state, anything like that. We've opened states because brands have asked. So we're really just here to help elevate and expand the
Love
knowledge of
that.
the various brands that we work with within our community.
Yeah, I love that. And I think I saw that you're doing an event with Red Bull and I thought that was just so cool. And it was something that was really fun for me. So I did a local music festival called Bottle Rock up here in Napa. And it was such a fun experience. And 40,000 people a day right by the stage. And it was so interesting. It was fast and furious just to get together and to happen this first year. But of course, for me, very much like yourself, like I'm really looking at how I can use these brand partnerships in the future. I'd love just, I know I'm asking a lot of brand questions because, of course, this is where my world is too. And you
No,
seem
it's
to be an
okay.
expert about it. I just love, I love that aspect of just coming to them and saying, what can we do for you? I just love, how do you approach these larger brands and like more of just asking, what are things that are important to you and how have you been able to approach these larger brands and find success?
I think about it like applying for a job where your resume really matters. And we've put so much work into building that resume. Yes, we started at a coffee shop and now we've done some pretty large things. And so being able to
Mm,
the brand partnerships scale with our company. So we didn't start with partnerships with Red Bull. We actually just got that last week. So it's taken a lot of work to get to that level of brand and have folks even know about us at those places. But I think it really goes back to like shouting from the rooftops what you're doing. And I post an excessive amount on LinkedIn, and I'm sure people roll their eyes every time I
mm,
post.
mm,
But I'm doing that because I'm telling people, look at
mm.
what we're doing. Does anyone want to get involved? Basically. And we've gotten so many amazing brand partners from that of people being like, this is so cool. I had no idea this existed. Let me support you. And so a lot of our brand partnerships have come from organic outreach rather than us prospecting. And we still do a lot of prospecting too. But yeah, just making people known or making yourself known. And then also it's like providing value. For a company like Red Bull, when you think Red Bull, you don't think non-alc. At least I didn't. I was like energy or vodka Red Bull or all of these things. And so working with them, I'm like, how do we make Red Bull even more inclusive? And how do we bring you to a new demographic of folks who maybe don't go the first thing I think of when I think of a mocktail is to include Red Bull. Um, and so just working with them on, again, it all goes back to education of like, how can we educate your customer that you're the right brand for them to pick? And so we're super excited about that collaboration. And yeah, that's next week actually. It'll be fun.
Yeah, nice. That's awesome. I think that's so cool. And I think one thing that I'm seeing with this and that I've seen happen in this space is it is just on the same level of like the holistic side of things, right? Like we're in the non-alc space, we're trying to do things that are better for ourselves. I saw you just did a cold plunge thing, and that was so cool to see. I think it's so interesting to see. Basically, there's just so many things on the same parallel as us that we can look at doing. Um, do you find that you have more success when you partner with a different type of activity? I guess this is my question to you. We spoke about, hey, just doing a non-alc event by itself is can be a little bit isolating for a myriad of different reasons. And then there's that aspect of what are people going to think? What am I just going to this non-alc event? Have you found it to be very like just very helpful to have that kind of in lieu of something else, or not in lieu, but connected to something else?
I think
Yeah.
the way that I plan events is like, what would I buy a ticket for? And yes, I would be at a non-alcoholic bar every night of my life, and I do go to the ones in New York quite a bit. But for someone who maybe is more sober curious or doesn't intend to be out like completely alcohol free, maybe they come to one event in dry January, maybe sober October. But how do we make people regulars? That's always my goal. It's like, how do we increase our repeat customers, make sure people are coming back? And we found success by keeping it very interesting and exciting for our community because if we've done breathwork events or yoga events and done a lot of research on
Right.
like who is our clientele, and it's health conscious consumers. You hit the nail on the head. So it's like, how do we curate events that yes have great mocktails, but also have super fun activities that maybe folks haven't tried before?
That's really interesting. And I think yeah, that resonates a lot. And of course, you're looking at your community, your target audience. You're looking at what other activities they're doing, right? And that is these health conscious people who are doing things like cold plunges and playing pickleball and doing these different things in that space. One of the kind of last questions I have for you is what surprised you the most from the non-alcoholic community?
I would say the
Hmm.
criticism from other sober people. I think that has been the hardest for me to get my head around because I started Absence Approved to provide options for folks that don't drink or wanted to drink less. And so I totally get haters from that drink alcohol. I think what's hard is the haters that don't drink alcohol
Yeah.
because it feels like it's coming from your own. And I think that's what's so hard is I never want to let somebody down who's in our community. It just hurts more. And it's again, I know you can relate because this is your baby too. It's you just care so much. And any sort of negative feedback, I take extremely personally, which is something I'm working on. But yeah, I've gotten a lot of criticism from people in the sober community
Yeah.
about having
Wow.
options that replicate the taste of alcohol. Um, we
Wow.
have about a 10-page long disclaimer now. But yeah, I think it's just sad. That's been the hardest part emotionally of this is I would never want to let somebody down in our community. And knowing that not everyone in our community supports what I'm doing is tough.
Wow, I didn't see that coming in a million years as your answer. And I also have to speak about this for a moment. In the past, I've done some collaborations with different sober communities, and it has been really tough. And I think it's there's a lot to go along with that because one thing that I've actually finally had to say to myself is I started getting a myriad of questions of why are you doing this? Is it 100% alcohol free? I can't even have any alcohol, even if it's 0.5% or less. And I finally got to the stance of wait a second, I am not here for the person who is struggling. I feel for them for struggling and that this does not suit them in their journey, but that is really interesting to hear, and I've had it happen to me too, where people are really vocal who are in that sober community, are part of the AA program and can't do anything like this. And there have been myriad of conversations about this aspect. And I think it's something that hasn't been present in the past because it wasn't possible. Now you have a situation where you have these like for like alternatives, but there's been a fine like a line in the sand from large organizations and programs saying, "No, this is not what you can do." You cannot go to a bar and have a non-alcoholic beer. You're going to be too whatever, too, it's too tempting or it's too just in your face. And I struggle with that. And I'm so interesting to hear that you struggle with it and people are vocal about it to you. And I guess I'm just asked, I guess the first thing that I'm hearing from you and me as a business person, I'm also wanting to just dig in a little bit more from a legality standpoint. I'm hearing you like you're saying a disclaimer to protect yourself from these people saying, I went to an absence of proof event. Had one drink and all of a sudden I lost my sobriety and I went and overdose. Is that kind of what you're saying you have to protect yourself from?
Be horrible. I do think that I know that people's sobriety is their responsibility, and my own sobriety is my own responsibility, and I can't put that on anyone else to protect me from. However, I do think it's my responsibility to provide knowledge and make sure that people know what they're getting into. And the disclaimer basically says, hey, we have options that are point 0.5 and below. We replicate the taste of alcohol. We replicate the atmosphere of a bar. That's the whole point, is to have this exciting nightlife experience for folks that don't want to drink. But we totally understand if that's not for you. And that's why we don't market to sober communities. We don't go out and say, if you're sober, we're going to have this party and we
Hmm.
can all talk about our sobriety. Like, that is not what we're here for. We have a lot of sober folks that are in recovery or have recovered and come. But my biggest thing is I'm going to provide you with all of the knowledge, and then you have to make your own decision
Right.
on whether or not that's something that makes sense for you. And so that's why on our menus, we mark point 0.5 and below. We say, tastes like alcohol or doesn't taste like alcohol. I would much rather someone
Yeah.
not come and not risk being triggered, because on a personal level, it's now I don't really have the same temptations. But when I was sober, when I was like 18, 19, I would not want to taste alcohol either. I get it. And my worst fear on like a personal human level is I would never want to be even
Yeah.
partially involved in fucking up somebody's journey. So anyway, that's how I feel. And it's taken a long time to come to how do we navigate this? Um, but at the end of the day, people have to know and be responsible for their own decisions.
Man, is that true? I think interesting enough, I think this is an aspect of our businesses that we're just always going to have and something that we're going to consistently have to look at and it'll evolve. And I just hope it evolves in the right way and becomes a conversation that we can have that isn't with a lot of animosity. And we can look at this and understand that we're doing our best, doing what we set out to do as a business. And at the same time, we're not here to tell you to drop your community, your program to come to our event. Exact opposite thing. We are trying to invite you, but if it doesn't work for you, like you said, at your stage of where you are, don't come. Like we're just here to provide this for people who want this in that
Right.
experience in that moment. That was something that's really interesting. And I think the only thing that I have to say about it is I really hope we can come to more of an understanding of each other and find more ways to be inclusive with each other. Because I do feel like it is a little bit of a lost opportunity to not be including each other and to try to find ways to work and to try to find ways to do an event that just represents what that event's about, right? It doesn't have to mean that you're saying that everyone within the community should be trying non-alcoholic drinks. You're just saying we are going to be doing this event at the same time and bringing a community together. And that's just been an interesting thing for me to grapple with. And I just, it's I think what I'm trying to say is it's interesting to see the challenges within this non-alcoholic space. And I'm so glad you brought up one that I have not heard anyone really talking about. So I appreciate your candidness and just bringing it to the limelight. And I hope, if anything, I can say as another non-alc person in the space, I feel for you. I feel for you. And I feel I want to make sure someone says it to you. You're doing an amazing job. You are offering something amazing to this community and I know I wouldn't be as motivated to do this if I didn't see other people like yourself doing it too. So thank you.
Thank you
Yeah.
for saying that.
Yeah. And I think, in closing, it's interesting because, at the same time, like it, it's almost this weird thing of, and this kind of makes sense to me in a way. It is a lot like being a bartender and being in the bar industry. We are an island of misfits, right? Like We are just these people who have, let's just call it what it is. We are sober and we probably have had some traumatic experiences or have dealt with addiction and gone through some really gnarly shit. But at the same time, I'm so motivated and also just energized by finding like-minded people like yourself who are in this and have gone through that thing. And that's almost what I'm saying. It's so cool to, even before we got on the call and this is our first time having a conversation, you and I are amigos. You and I have something that we know that we have gone through something that is really challenging and have come out the other side and have tried to make ourselves better. And I think it goes back to something that you said earlier about how alcohol wasn't serving you and you were moving forward. And I know how challenging it must be to be trying to move forward. And you have these people in our space who should be on our side, but aren't because of X, Y, and Z. So I hope we can move through that and I hope we can find those great conversations. But I'm just so impressed by what you have done in your community. I look forward to ways that we can all collaborate in the future. I've loved seeing just you making these impacts in these different places. And the one thing I have seen is that there isn't a San Francisco Bay Area chapter yet. So it'd be fun to really chat that through and see how we might be able to do some fun events in the future. But it's just been so amazing to have your time.
Such a great conversation. So thank you so much for taking the time and excited to see all of the awesome stuff that you do in the future.
Yeah, for sure. And so awesome. So it seems like the best place to keep up with you and just see what you're doing. LinkedIn and TikTok have been the ones that I've used the most to follow your journey. But LinkedIn is definitely a great one. And I'm going to be using that platform a little bit more. I think that's a great avenue to try to get the business going. So appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks so much. Excited to stay in touch.
Yeah. All right. Sounds great. Have a great day. Appreciate you. Bye.